the modern Scotland is more diverse than the team that turned out in this World Cup. And this is a plea, really, for the SFA, who are not particularly progressive. They're in their blazers, they're dominated by club football, to look everywhere in Scotland for talent. And, if that's a Nigerian kid living in a Glasgow tenement, if that's a kid who has a Pakistani granddad, or if it's a poor white kid who's trying to join a club that calls itself a community club but can't afford the fees. Mum can't just pay that money. Let's open this up to everyone and try and get a team that reflects a modern country and that can play better football.
Les Snowdon's Race Around the World Cup, live on Times Radio.
We have so much to pack in today. Some of Scotland's squad have arrived home at Glasgow Airport following their exit from the World Cup and Steve Clarke's resignation. Throughout the tournament, we catch up with sports journalist and legend Les Snowdon, who's doing his own Race Around the World Cup adventure, and he joins us now from where, Les? Where are you today?
I'm at Vancouver Airport. I'm heading towards San Francisco.
OK, we'll talk more about that trip in just a moment's time. Let's dwell on some pain, though, for a minute. Steve Clarke resigned after Scotland's exit, and I think that you would probably agree that was the right thing to do. You had found him disappointing and a letdown yourself.
Definitely. I think when you put it in the context of people emptying their bank balances and travelling across to this continent, and then the performance that arrived. He did a great job. He got Scotland back into major tournaments, but he'd become a bit of a joyless figure, and the team themselves are a bit joyless. So I was pleased to see him make that decision himself.
Right. Let's talk about happier things. I think you told us last week, and this may be in the figment of my imagination, Les, because it was ever so hot here, that your wife is Canadian, therefore you're entitled to be a Canadian supporter too. Have I just made that up?
No, that's correct.
Oh, good.
And the weekend consisted of me being in Seattle and watching Iran arguing with itself outside a FIFA stadium, and then moving to the magnificent Vancouver, where I was lucky enough to be at the biggest party in Canadian football history. It was magnificent. And I had, it wasn't a football top, but I had a Canadian Olympic top on, so I blended in nicely.
And what has Canada made of the World Cup? Where is football in Canada's love of sport league table?
Vancouver was completely consumed by it. It was just a magnificent spectacle. Everybody had a red top on, and Canada is such a diverse country. It was just a beautiful thing to see. They definitely have bought into this, and I think as the host nations continue to be successful, we're seeing something quite important happening here for football.
I'm glad you mentioned diversity. It means I can segue into the next question, because I know that you've been reflecting a bit on the makeup of Scotland's team, and it's perhaps an opportunity to say something out loud that the team isn't reflecting diversity in the same way that other nations' teams are.
Yes, it's something that's occurred to me on this trip, that you can almost see the sort of immigration history of some of these countries. And Scotland, and this isn't meant as a criticism, it's just where we are. Scotland has had less immigration, but the modern Scotland is more diverse than the team that turned out in this World Cup. And this is a plea, really, for the SFA, who are not particularly progressive. They're in their blazers, they're dominated by club football, to look everywhere in Scotland for talent. And, if that's a Nigerian kid living in a Glasgow tenement, if that's a kid who has a Pakistani granddad, or if it's a poor white kid who's trying to join a club that calls itself a community club but can't afford the fees. Mum can't just pay that money. Let's open this up to everyone and try and get a team that reflects a modern country and that can play better football.
Yeah, it's such an important thing to note. Tell us a little bit about the Pride match. You mentioned it briefly there.
It was a very, very strange thing. I was kind of wondering about trying to see where the story might be, and I spoke to the members of the Iranian diaspora who were talking about 40,000 people killed in their country this year. The fact that they were disgusted at FIFA for allowing the team to play, and all of a sudden one of them said that there was a guy in an Iran top, and one of them said he's a member of the IRGC. The hated thought police from Iran, and it just turned very ugly, people shouting at each other, nose-to-nose stuff. an elderly lady sort of beating her chest and screaming at this fella in Farsi. I'm pretty sure he wasn't a member of the IRGC, but it was just a very ugly scene. And then you went into the stadium and there was a magnificent game that Iran thought they'd won. And, there was fluctuations in fortunes. It was just an absolutely compelling and intoxicating day.
Yeah, they were playing Egypt, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You've had a pedicure. I can't let you go without mentioning that, Les.
Well, I asked Chat to try and calculate how many steps I've done in these past 3 weeks. It said 300,000 to begin with and then scaled it up to 400,000. My feet aren't the best, if I'm honest with you, and I've got very high arches. So I was walking past this nail shop that was packed with women getting their nails done. I thought, I know, I'll go in there and spoil their day. So I did. The office junior was given the job. She gave up 5 or 10 minutes in, and then the manager came along, had a look at them, shook her head, but got stuck in. And about 50 minutes later, I appeared with much better trotters.
Right. Do you know what? I think I've been broadcasting now for about, how old am I? I'm 57, so 37 years. Nobody's ever told me about their high arches before. And I love you. I love you for that tiny detail about your feet. We don't have enough time to talk, Les. We will make more time for you tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed. Les is on his way from Vancouver to California, and every day on this programme we will catch up with him as he follows the World Cup on and very much off the pitch.
Les Snowdon's Race Around the World Cup, live on Times Radio.